Hello there, it's Gabby here for you, and I hope this finds you well. This week, I am talking about the power of setting boundaries as self care. Now, setting boundaries is something that I have struggled a lot with in my life in the past, and it's something that a lot of the people that I'm working with find challenging as well. And it's a huge topic. Setting boundaries can be so challenging in so many ways. So, this week, I'm really going to focus just on one aspect, which is the power of setting boundaries and how that can improve your own self care. I talk a lot about self care because it's been part of my journey, my recovery from cancer, but also my journey to be the person that I want to be, the person who is happy and healthy and creating a life that I'm comfortable with, a life that I love, and really coming back to myself and not apologizing for that, but knowing that I'm okay, I am enough. And if you're listening to this, I want to tell you that applies to you as well. You are enough. You're not broken. You might have things that you want to work on, but so do I. And to me, that's part of the journey of life is learning new things, learning from the mistakes that you've made, maybe showing yourself a little bit of compassion, getting over those mistakes, learning and moving forward, and using your experience of life. I'm in my 60s now. I've got a lot of experience behind me. The beautiful ladies that I coach as well, I learn from them all the time, and I'm really privileged to share their journey with them and see them grow and flourish and learn new things as well. And some of it we think, oh God, I wish I'd have learned this a long time ago. But maybe we weren't ready for the lesson then. And so it's my pleasure to share with you what I've learned, what I've seen other people learning as well. And I hope that some of it can help you as well. But going back to the topic of this podcast, self care for me is absolutely crucial. And so many times I see people getting ill or being unhappy or whatever, something's not quite working in their life because they're not making their self care a priority. And I'm here to tell you, for me, making my self care a priority has really contributed to the quality of my life improving in so many ways. And so, in this short podcast, I can only cover the power of setting boundaries as it relates to self care. But setting boundaries is a topic that I'm going to come back to. And in next week's podcast, I'm going to talk about the power of setting boundaries in relationships and how you can clearly express your needs without feeling guilty and in a way that feels comfortable for you. But this week, I want to talk about setting boundaries, understanding what are boundaries and why are they important, and share some strategies with you and some real life examples of where somebody has learned to set a boundary and it's really improved things. And I've got some key phrases that you might want to practice if you're struggling with some of this. And you don't have to use them verbatim. They just might give you some ideas of how you can word things, how you can communicate your needs a lot more clearly, maybe than you have done in the past, and some scenarios that you might resonate with as well. So, what are boundaries and why are they so important? Well, the different types of boundaries, there are physical, emotional, time, mental. And what are boundaries? Well, they're very personal to you, limits of what acceptable and what is not acceptable. Okay. They can serve as a framework to protect your emotional, mental, physical, and even your spiritual well being. Think about boundaries as being invisible lines that mark where your needs, responsibilities, and comfort zones end and other people's begin. And there are different types of boundaries and they can apply in different areas of life. So, physical boundaries is a good example. If you think about this, I am a hugger. I love to get a hug off somebody. I never get enough hugs. Conversely, I know people who are not comfortable with that, and that's their personal choice. There's no right and there's no wrong. As you know, there's no judgment with any of this. It's what's right for you. So, when you can really consider your own needs as being important, you can think about this and think, well, what's comfortable for me? You might feel comfortable with a hug, but a kiss is a step too far. Whatever. It's about what's comfortable for you. Emotional boundaries. Sometimes we call it sometimes oversharing. Concern about how we manage our feelings and how we interact. So some people, they're an open book. Their lives, the ups, the downs, the pretty and the not so pretty are shared with everybody. They might be shared on social media. You might not be comfortable with that. And again, there's no right and there's no wrong with this. It's what's right for you. But if somebody wants to really press you on something that you think is quite a personal matter and you don't want to discuss it, then that is fine as well. So you might just want to say, well, I'm not ready to talk about this right now. Can we discuss it later? And again, you don't need to apologize for that, but you're stating very clearly, no, I don't want to talk about whatever. Okay. Time boundaries, and I see this a lot again in the world of work, involve how we allocate our time and our energy. For example, no, saying no to, I can't attend that meeting because I need to work on something else without apology, very clearly, very straightforward. Mental boundaries protect our thoughts, beliefs, and opinions, allowing us to stay true to ourselves without letting others influence or invalidate our thinking. It's being able to say quite confidently, yeah, I respect your opinion, but actually I see things differently. And I see this a lot. I see a lot of anger and a lot of division, particularly on social media. And I wonder sometimes things that people write on social media, would they really say that to a close friend? But I do believe it's possible to have different political views to somebody else, still respect their opinion, unless they're very extreme and that you find them really offensive. But we should surely, if you've got a friend who's got a different political point of view to me, I'm quite interested to understand why they think the way that they do. But again, I'm not going to let other people influence how I think. I know my own views, I know my own values, and I'm comfortable with that. So I'm happy to say that. So why do boundaries matter so much? Well, I really believe they protect your well-being. Boundaries allow you to prioritize your needs, whether in any of these areas, so that you don't become overwhelmed or depleted. If you don't have boundaries, it's quite often easy for people to take advantage, to take your time or your money or your whatever it is, your resource, because they don't realize there's an issue for you. But where you're comfortable saying, no, I can't do that thing, you're establishing your boundaries then. If you're not comfortable with establishing your boundaries, and again, I've seen this so many times, it can lead to burnout, it can lead to stress and anxiety, and sometimes resentment, because you've got this thing, particularly in families, where, well, they should know how I feel. If you're not communicating well, don't assume that other people know how you feel. But I do believe that one of the benefits of setting boundaries, it's really, really empowering. By setting boundaries, you take control of your life and you assert what is important to you. Boundaries will give you the confidence to make decisions that align with your values and your goals, rather than being swayed by what other people demand or expect. And the next one is relationships. And I said I'm going to do a separate podcast about relationships and boundaries, because that is a huge topic as well. But setting clear boundaries can really preserve relationships. Healthy boundaries can foster mutual respect if you're clear about your limits and people know where they stand with you. Conversely, poor boundaries can lead to misunderstandings, resentments, and conflict in relationships, which none of us want. Setting clear boundaries, resentment is a big one. It's saying yes to things that you don't really want to say yes to will lead to frustration and resentment on both sides of a relationship. Boundaries prevent this by making sure you only engage in situations, commitments, or relationships that serve you well. And this is my main topic for this week. Boundaries encourage self-care. If you're comfortable with who you are and what you're asking for and what you need to have your needs fulfilled, that is ultimate self-care. It's setting your boundaries about your self-care, helping making space for your activities and what's important to you. You need to have, I believe, things in your life that nurture your mental, your emotional, and your physical health. So I'm very busy at the minute. I've got a lot going on, but I'm old school. I like to sit down with a paper diary beginning of the week, and there's some things in there that are non-negotiable for me. So I've committed to going to the gym 3 times a week, and I'm committed to going to a yoga class once a week. Those are the things that go into my diary. So there's no discussion about that. That is happening. I've committed. I've made a commitment to myself for my own mental health and my physical health. So many levels that these things are feeding me on. I feel better for going. Don't always want to go, but I know I'm going to feel amazing afterwards. And that is something, again, those are my boundaries. No, I'm not going to do such a thing when I'm at my yoga class. My yoga class is coming first. Another benefit of having clear boundaries is it can help you avoid manipulation. Okay, clear boundaries protect you from being taken advantage of. So saying no, I know, can be challenging because if you are anything like I was a people pleaser for many years, and it felt horrible to be saying no to people. Really didn't want to do it. It felt like this is not something nice people do. Surely, if my family want this, or my boss wants that at work, or somebody wants that, if I'm a nice person, I should do that. And it took me a long time to work out a way of dealing with my own needs and realizing they were just as important as other people's demands on my time. And so I'm going to give you some tips now about for being polite and firmly saying no. Okay, you don't need to be rude. You don't need to be aggressive. I think we're all a bit scared. A lot of women are a bit scared of being seen as being aggressive, as seen as being a not nice person. But really, you just want to be clear, polite, and firmly saying no. Be clear and direct. And the key to saying no effectively is to be clear and avoid ambiguity. Vague responses leave the door open for people to push back. I know people who make excuses, random excuses, when they don't want to do something. And I'd much rather they just say, no, I don't want to do that. Or no, I can't do that this week, maybe next week. Or no, that doesn't really work for me at the minute. Have you got an alternative? Can we do something else? So an example that I've got here is if a friend was to ask you to help with an event that falls on a weekend when you are planning to rest, your response could be, thanks for thinking of me, but I won't be able to help you out this weekend. I need to take some time out for myself. And you don't have to apologize for that. And that is something that I always used to think, oh, well, I'll sneak in some time for myself when I've got space. No, it's a priority. And for me, I quite like to plan a weekend or a day when I haven't got any commitments, when I can just think about doing something that really is good for me, even if it's just reading, even if it's just sleeping. It can be watching a film now, or listening to some music, or going for a nice walk. Something for me. That's not doing nothing. That is something that is feeding your soul, that's making you feel good. It's all part of your self-care. And we all need downtime. We can't go 100 miles an hour constantly. We know this on a logical level, but so many of us do it. Bang, bang, bang. Our diaries are full. We've got overcommitted before we know it. So for me, one of the big lessons I had to learn for my own self-care was to put myself first sometime, even if it was just marking out some time that says, no, on that day, I'm not doing anything. Sorry if somebody else wants me to do something, I'm going to say no. So sometimes you can offer an alternative, but only if you want to. So an example of this might be a family member asks you to babysit, but you've already planned some downtime for yourself. And your response could be, I can't help you with babysitting tonight, but I might be able to help you out next week if you still need it. So use empathy, be soft in your language if you want to, acknowledge the other person, but hold firm. This is not a tentative thing that you want to do. You want to feel comfortable. You want to feel confident about doing this, and practicing some of this can help you if you're nervous or anxious about some of these conversations. Another example here I've got is a friend is upset because you're not attending their gathering because you need a night off. And your response could be, look, I understand you're disappointed and I am sorry I can't make it, but I really need some downtime this evening. Okay. But practice saying no without apologizing excessively. It is natural to feel inclined to apologize when turning someone down, but over apologizing can undermine the boundary that you're setting. It sounds like you don't really mean it. So an example is a colleague asks you to cover their shift, but it conflicts with your plans. So your response could be, I can't cover your shift this time. I hope you can find somebody else. That's not unpleasant, is it? Okay. And another one you could use is not right now. It's a gentle decline. So an example is a friend asks you to join a big project or an activity, but you're currently overwhelmed. So your response could be, I can't take that on right now, but I will let you know if things change. Okay. So I've got another scenario here. Saying no to an overbearing customer or a client. It could be a boss, it could be a co-worker. So they say, I need this project done by tomorrow. Can you fit it in? And your response could be, and sometimes it helps me to take a breath. Take a breath before you respond. Look, I understand this is urgent, but I'm unable to meet that deadline. Let's work together to set a more realistic deadline. Okay. That's not aggressive, is it? It's not. So I'd ask you really to think about boundaries. Are there areas of your life where you'd like to set clearer boundaries? Do sometimes you feel you're being taken advantage of? And maybe I'd ask you to think about, there's no judgment, but I'd ask you to think about, is that because you've not been clear at setting your boundaries? And if that's true, then the good news is there's something you can do about that. You can change that. You can think about some of the strategies that I've talked about today. But also I'll ask you to think about prioritizing your self-care, because it's crucial. It's crucial for your health and happiness. Okay, so I'd encourage you just to take small, manageable steps. Again, with setting boundaries. If there's anything that I've talked about that you'd like help with, just ping me a message. You know I'm here for you. Really, really appreciate you listening today. As I say, next week's podcast will all be about boundaries in relationships, because that's a huge topic, and how you can maintain healthy connections, asserting your needs and establishing those boundaries without destroying a relationship. As always, thank you so much for listening. It really means a lot to me. Wherever you're listening or watching to this, it really helped me out if you could subscribe, if you could rate the podcast, if you found it useful, and also if you could share it with anybody who needs to know this information. That would mean the world to me. So as always, thank you for listening. Stay safe, have a wonderful week, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye-bye, my love.